Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today, I want to talk about insecurity, or what I mentioned in a previous video about game conferences, that feeling of imposter syndrome. If you don't know what this is, you're lucky. It's that general feeling you get that you can't do your job, you can't do it right, you can't do it well, you can't get it done in time, and eventually you're going to be found out for the fraud you are. Well, relax. Everybody's felt this way at one time or another. I felt that way. Occasionally, I still do feel that way. I pretty much felt like that way for most of the time for about the first, I want to say 15 years. I mean, I don't want to make anyone concerned. I don't want to discourage you, but I'd say until the development of Fallout, I always felt like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I'm good enough to be in this group. And keep in mind, I already had Grand Slam Bridge and Bard's Tale Construction Set and Rags to Riches under my belt. So I'd made several games. But that imposter syndrome is a strong feeling. A lot of people get it. I get it. You're going to get it. So let's just talk about it, because I think if you know more about it and the fact that other people feel it, maybe it'll make you feel better. So what causes it? This is what I think causes it. First of all, if you're in a new job or game development is new to you professionally, it's totally natural that you're going to have some insecurity about what you're doing. It's a new job. You're not exactly even sure what you're supposed to be doing sometimes. Like I've said, a big chunk of game development is still an art. It's not a science. It's not like you can pick up a book and read it and go, I'm now a game developer. Some of it you're going to have to feel your way through. Also, game development attracts really smart people. So you're going to find yourself surrounded by really smart people. I've already mentioned at Carbine, I met probably the smartest person I've ever met in my life. But I've constantly encountered people who were better programmers, better designers, or even more specifically, they're better at the particular thing I was trying to do. Better AI programmer, better UI programmer, better game mechanic programmer, better game mechanic designer. You just run into these people and it's going to keep happening your whole career. So manage that expectation right now. There's also a problem in the industry that I've mentioned. This comes from reviewers. It comes from game players and fans. It comes from your own colleagues. You're often considered to be only as good as your last game. So if you haven't made a game yet, you're not considered good at all by some of those people. It's like, prove it. Prove you should be here doing this. Let me just tell you that that's not going to change even after you get a game out. If you do a bad game, they're like, aha, I knew you were bad. If you do a good game, and this has happened to me, they'll go, it's a one-off. You're a flash in the pan. It's not going to happen again. If you make games and your games are getting better, and you're like, okay, I see an upward slope to my ability, people are still going to say things like, well, yeah, I think it was, it wasn't really you, it was the group. You got in with a good group. Or if your soap ever goes down a little bit, they're like, aha, that's it. The decline is set in. You're a fraud. You were always bad. It was a mistake. That one game you made was good. So this is always going to happen. So whatever the cause is, these are things that are going to start affecting you and making you think, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this isn't for me. They're wrong. So I'm just hear me now and believe me later. They're wrong. Everybody has this feeling, except maybe the rare sociopath. But you know who I'm talking about. Let me tell you how it's going to manifest itself. And not just in you. Many people handle that nagging insecurity in different ways. This may be happening to you, or it may be happening to people you work with. So maybe you can have a little more empathy for people who behave in some of the ways I'm going to talk about. So one thing you may just see is a constant struggling. Somebody who's just constantly struggling with what they're doing. They never think it's good enough. They always want to redo it. They never finish it. They do most of it, but then they stop before it's done and they're like, no, this isn't right. And they don't want to, dot their I's and cross their T's because then it's done and has to be submitted where they will be judged. So you see this kind of struggling among your colleagues. It's probably because they're insecure about the job they're doing. Sometimes they redirect that outward and they belittle other people's ideas. So when I talked about brainstorming sessions and I said there were people in there who were constantly putting down other people's ideas, those often turned out to be some of the most insecure people. They weren't sure about their idea, so they're like, well, if I put down other people's ideas, even jokingly, maybe mine won't seem as bad. Especially if they get angry when their own ideas are critiqued, even if it's critiqued in a constructive way, if they're getting angry about it, they're probably just insecure, and that's their way of dealing with it. And notice this isn't limited to game developers. You see this in game forums all the time. You see people enter these forums and they have all these brilliant ideas. None of their ideas are bad. They can't believe game developers aren't using their ideas because they're brilliant and everybody else's ideas are dumb. You especially see this in people who've never ever made a game before. So they're just they seem incredibly self-possessed. It's probably that they're incredibly insecure, and that's their projected outward way of dealing with it. Sadly, I've seen insecurity manifest itself in how people try to advance. They will often, because they're so worried about their work and their position, they try to advance. I see it as one of two things. Either they figure, well, if once I get out of being a junior or even a staff level, if I'm a senior or a lead, they can't let me go. Yeah, they can. So I see people trying to advance thinking it will make them more secure in their job. But I also see them putting down other people and their ideas and, critiquing their work because they want to eliminate competition. I've watched people who think someone else is better than them, and you can tell they know that. So they try to belittle their work or do anything they can to kind of elevate them above this person that everybody is seeing is really good. And then here's an odd thing I've seen where insecure people often believe whatever lies get told to them because either it makes them feel better or they see agreeing with the liar as sort of important for their standing at the company, especially if it's someone who's above them. And the reason I've seen this and wonder why people believe these is I've seen people told things that would be trivial for them to confirm. Trivial. Like literally they could ask a person sitting next to them, hey, I was just told, And I'm talking about confirmation. I'm told they could be shown documents that are date stamped, so it's like, yes, this idea has been around before, or yes, your review was put in, things like that. But they just, for whatever reason, choose to believe the lie that the person told them. Not sure. Maybe it confirms their own beliefs, even if it's something that's bad for them. These are all things you should try to avoid. So let me talk about a little bit about how you can try to combat insecurity, because I think just talking about insecurity is not enough unless I give you some tips to how to combat it. If you're an employee, keep in mind you were hired. You were vetted by people with more experience than you and found adequate, or even better than adequate. You were found, hey, this is somebody we want on our team. You were vetted. Try to remember that every day. You went through a panel of people with more experience than you, and you were deemed okay. So that right there should help a little bit. But also, talk to your peers. Talk to the people you work with. If you're an indie, go to conferences and talk to your peers there. Because you will often find that not only are they thinking some of these things that you think, but they also have good ways of getting around it. And also just knowing that everybody's kind of in the same boat as you just makes you feel better. Talk to your boss. I hope you have a good one who can critique your work in a way that you realize they're critiquing it not because your work is bad, but because they see potential in it. Leonard mentioned this about going to art school. When he did art, he often got critiqued and it brought him down. And then his art teacher said, well, I'm critiquing you because you're good and I think you could be great. There's other people in here that they're just okay and they're never going to be better than okay. So why would I even give them critiques? they're not going to go anywhere. So view the stuff your boss is telling you as his or her effort to get you into being a better game developer. That's their goal. Every boss wants their team to become better, or they should. That's kind of the goal. If you don't have a boss, or even if you do, or if you find you have a bad one, try to find a mentor. I was never overly successful at this, but the industry is way bigger now, and there's a lot of people who've been doing it for a long time. Try to find somebody at your company or at another company who is actively working on something in your area, a programmer who specializes in networking and you're a network programmer, a designer who likes to make RPG mechanics and that's what you want to do. And just go to them and ask if you can have advice, if they can answer questions. Of course, it's easier if that's your own company. You can probably find people at other companies. I would look around for one. Conferences are great too, especially roundtables. You can watch a lot of people who work on one area talk about things, and you can find one that kind of aligns with your own game development philosophy and ask them questions. And then remember one last thing, and I've said this a lot, I'm going to repeat it here because I think it's really important for people to hear, is failure is an opportunity to improve. If you never fail, you're never going to get that opportunity. I've said this a lot before, but the games I'd made that came out the gate really good, I learned less about being a good game developer from those games than I did from games that came out and got a lot of criticism and lower review scores. When you fail at something, you learn a lot about how to improve. When you succeed at something, well, I mean, that's good. You did a good job, but you're not really sure how to improve that job and make it better. So just try to view failure as an opportunity to learn and improve. And that also helps deal with some of the insecurity. I hope this helps. And I hope if you're feeling imposter syndrome, maybe you feel a little less of it now.